Welcome back guys, welcome back to my channel. Today in this Adobe Photoshop tutorial, I will show you guys how to create a sunset scenery artwork using the basic gradients and some filters. And also additional to the artwork, I will also show you guys using the smart objects how to create different tones or different lights based on the light source and the changes in the environment. For example, in here, you can see I have created three different set of lights which represent this different state of the sun while it was setting. Using this same principle, you can create any type of artwork and change the light and tone very easily. All right. So let's get started. First thing, I have created a new artboard in Photoshop. You can have any size you want. I'm going to double click to unlock this layer and going to name this layer as base layer. All right, now I'm going to choose the colors for our artboard. So these colors no need to be perfect. Later on, we will edit the colors using the Photoshop raw filter. So basically, we are going to choose the key colors for a sunset scene. So let's start with a shape layer. And for this shape layer, I'm going to apply a darker tone of blue, which is going to be the shadow part of the sky or even water, it doesn't matter. And I will make a copy of this layer by Alt drag. And then for this one, I'm going to apply a lighter tone of blue. We will apply in between the next color and the darker area of the sky. All right. And the second color I'm going to choose is going to be yellow. You can also find the sunset scenery photo and get some reference from those pictures as well. For this, I'm not going to use a picture reference. I'm just going to draw in here. Okay. And the third color is going to be the red color, which will be the closest part of the sun sky, which is closer to the sun area, and same as in the water reflection as well. And the horizon, which is the center line, I'm going to apply a darker tone. All right, so let's go in and select the gradient, or you can just press G in your keyboard, which will bring up the gradient options in here, and just select the gradient, which will open up this gradient window. Now let's choose the colors from our selection. For this artwork, most important part is placing the colors in the correct place. You can also make the size of this palette bigger, so you have more space to arrange the colors. So I'm going to just apply the sky color first from our color selection, and from the small point in here you can choose the spread of the gradient. All right, so I'm going to make a rough background first. Later on we can adjust correctly. All right, so I think this should come in here. So this is the sky portion, and now let's start the bottom portion, which is the reflection of the sea. For this, basically, I'm going to reverse the same colors as other side, but I will make the colors a little bit different than the original colors so that it will look a little bit more realistic. Play with the position and the spread something similar to mine. You don't need to be perfect at first. We just get the first base look, then we can work from there. All right. So, but the center portion, I'm going to bring it to the center part of our output. So for this, I'm going to choose somewhere around 50%. All right. So first, let's apply and see how our current gradient looks like. So I'm going to close this gradient window, and I'm going to select the shift key and draw the gradient from top to bottom, and it's look like this. It's all right, but we still need to adjust. First thing what I'm going to do is going to draw the center portion, which is the horizon line. It's going to be very dark and the spread will be very, very low. So I will adjust something like this in here. Let's apply and see how our artboard will look. Okay, not bad, not bad, but let's work with the gradients again. So adjust according for your artboard size and your artwork, and try to get something similar to my final results. I'm adjusting just the positions of the color and the spread of the color to get something like this in here. I think this is good enough, so I'm going to stick to this one. Okay. All right. Now create a new layer from here and go back to the gradient, and this time adjust the gradient a bit, little bit different from the original layer, original gradient. For this one, I'm going to make these lighter portions spread a little bit more than the original one. So let's adjust this one like this and apply the same from top to bottom like previously to the new layer. And let's hide these boxes. Now you can see we have two layers which is almost the same, but the spread of the yellow, the lighter portion is little bit different. Okay, so I'm going to apply a mask on top of this, the topmost layer, the second layer we have created. Now select the mask, make sure you select the black color, and now you select the paintbrush and apply a soft brush from the general brush in the brushes and bring down the opacity, and now go in here and just touch up like this in here. Instead of have a line, it will spread out like this in a natural scenario. It won't be a straight line like earlier. So something like this is fine. Now select both of these gradient layers and make as smart object. All right. Now let's change some colors. Let's apply a curve and let's make the brighter areas little bit more brighter and darker areas little bit more darker. And we don't need all these reference boxes. I'm just going to delete these shapes layers. All right. All right, guys. So before we proceed with the next layer, we are going to draw the sun in our last step. But before that, we need to know where we are going to place the sun. So in this case, I'm going to place the sun somewhere around here. So what I'm going to do is I will make sure all other components are based on the sun and its light so that it will look a little bit more natural. Okay, so I'm going to create a new layer in here, and for this layer I'm going to apply a darker tone, and a black color tone is fine. And let's bring down the opacity to somewhere around here, and for this I'm going to apply a mask. I only want this one to be shown in the edges like a vignette effect or darkness when the sun is setting down. All right, so something like this will do. I think this is fine. So once you are satisfied with your design, now let's select everything together and make it as a smart object. Now make a copy of this smart object. You can just go to layer and make a duplicate layer, or just Control G or Command G in Mac will make the copy in the layers. And I want to make one more copy. So total you will have 3 layers. Duplicate one more layer, and for now just hide the topmost layer. Just choose the second layer and go to filters and select filter gallery, which will open up this old Photoshop filter effects. And in here select brush strokes, and inside brush strokes select the spatter. Now you can adjust the spray radius and the smoothness until you get something like a foggy effect with some sort of noise. Something along this line is fine. Once you're satisfied, just say OK, which will apply the effect to the second layer. Now select the mask of the effect and go to gradient again, and this time you can save this if you want. Now let's go to the basic gradients and select black and white. Bring the black to the center and white to these edges like this, and you can bring down the spread as well, something along this line. And while you are inside the mask, apply the gradient on top of the mask. To view the mask, you can just press the Alt key and click on the mask, which will bring the mask to the screen. Now you can adjust, if you want to adjust the center position to be a little bit more opaque, you can work here. So for me, I'm satisfied with this one, and I'm just going to click on the layer. Again, now let's go to the uppermost layer, the second copy, third copy. And for this one, again, we go back to the filter gallery. This time we are going to apply a different filter. Select the distort effect, and inside the distort, select the ocean ripple. Again, same as earlier, you can adjust the brush stroke size and the highlight until you get something similar to see water surface. Once you're satisfied, just select OK. And now I'm going to apply a blur filter for this layer again. Go to filter and blur and Gaussian blur. And for this one, I'm just going to keep it very minimum, around 1.2 is fine, and OK. Now apply a mask. We only need to see this on the water, so you can select the brush and mask out all the position from the sky to the yellow area in here on the surface of the sea. I think this looks fine, so I'm just going to leave as it is. All right, so the next step is I'm going to draw the cloud. It's really easy. Just create a new layer again and select this new layer and go to filters and go to render and select the fiber from the render. Make sure before you go to this effect, you have to choose black and white in your color pickers. If not, it will come with different colors if you choose different colors. All right, so now you can adjust these in here. So I will just adjust some basic. I want it to be very thinner and liney, something along this line. And this look fine. Now I'm going to turn it around 90 degrees and I'm going to make it fit to the screen. You don't need to worry too much on the resolution in here because it's going to blend in with the opacity blend effect. All right. Now go to the blending modes and select soft light or overlay based on your colors. I think for me, I will select the soft light. And now again, I will go to the opacity and bring it down somewhere around this line. All right, this look cool. And for this one also, I'm going to apply a mask, select the layer and apply a mask. Again, select the brush, select the gradient, and let's bring the spread like this, white and black. And I will apply something like this. We only need to see this in the bottom area. When you go higher, you won't see much of a cloud. That's the effect I want. And again, you can play with the opacity and also with the mask. You can use a brush to make it a little bit more realistic looking clouds effect. All right, cool. Now make one more copy and flip it around vertically and bring it down. And this time I'm going to apply a different tone. You can play with the opacity or you can easily go to the blending modes and change the blending mode. For this one, I need to have something darker, maybe a linear light. Yeah, it's look fine. So I'm going to choose the linear light and maybe we can bring up the opacity a bit. This look fine for me. Again, I will choose the mask. Using the brush, I will hide the top portion closer to the horizon. We only need to see this wave effect closer to the camera. And when you go far away, you rarely see the waves. All right, you can again play with the opacity until you get the most realistic look. Okay, I'm happy with these results, so I'm going to leave as it is. Now select everything and make as one group. Later we make as a smart object also. For now, just make as one group and just click on here. And now create a new curve layer on top and let's adjust the colors. I want to bring a little bit darker in the edges, so I will make something like this. Again, for the curve mask, I'm going to mask out the center portion. So the edges is going to be a bit more darker, but the center portion closer to the horizon is going to be a little bit more lighter. All right. You can still bring down the edges darker. Just create a new layer and for that new layer, apply a black and white gradient like this in here. Bring down the opacity and make sure your opacity blending mode is selected to multiple. And again, apply a mask and center position. I'm going to mask it out. I only want the dark color tone on the top of the sky and the bottom of the sea. All right, this looks fine. Okay, so let's draw some stars and the moons. And for this, I'm going to use a shape layer. Go to the shape layer and select ellipse. This is for the moon. I'm just going to draw an ellipse in here. And for this, I'm going to apply a white or something like a yellowish tone. Yeah, this looks fine. And again, alt drag and bring it out here and make it a little bit more bigger. Control and select the layer, which will select this layer and mask it out, and we need the invert version of the selection. So control and I will invert this one. So now this look like a moon. And we can also apply a blurriness to this one if you want to have a little bit more realistic look. And let's go to the blending mode and choose overlay, which look like a realistic moon. You can make it bigger or smaller based on your artwork. I will make it a little bit more smaller and place it in here. All right, this look fine. Now we don't need this one, just delete this. Okay. All right, so let's add some stars to the scene. Really simple. Go to the shape layer and draw some circles randomly in here. One in here and one maybe in here, little bit. You can make it different sizes, it doesn't matter. And if it's more random, it will look more nice. Okay. All right, this is good enough. All right, so now we are going to draw the reflection of the sun, but we are not going to draw the sun now. I will draw the sun in the last step, but I'm going to draw the reflection now so that it will look more nicer and realistic in the last effect. To do that, it's really easy. What I'm going to do is I'm going to open this group in here, and let's make a copy from this layer, which is the ripple effect layer on top of the sea, and I will bring it down to the top, and let's bring the opacity to higher and change the blending mode to art mix, so it will bend something like this in here. And now I'm only going to keep it in the center position and mask out all the outside area. We can also bring down the opacity a little bit, something like this. Play around with your settings, play around with your brushes until you get something like this. We don't need too much reflection because our sun is almost set. It's barely visible, so you only see a thin line of light, something like this in here. And you guys can play around with your artwork. I think I will just apply a little bit more closer to the surface also, something like this. And I think this is too much. Yeah, this is fine. Don't worry guys, later also we can edit this even after you make it as a smart object. I think this look fine, so I'm just going to make this one as a smart object. Before that, I'm going to apply a blur effect. All right, okay, so now all looks good. Select everything and make as a group and go in here and convert it to smart filter. All right guys, so now let's go to the camera raw filter and let's start playing with the colors. So what I'm going to do in here is I'm going to increase the brightness and make the shadow a little bit more darker and the details a little bit more higher. So I'm not going to go into detail in here. You guys can, because this is not going to be the same settings as yours. So I'm going to increase the temperature, bringing closer to the blue line. So wherever I'm satisfied, I will say okay, and I will play with all these settings. You can also do the same with your artwork also. And Camera Raw filter is a very powerful tool for photo editing software inside Photoshop, and you guys can play with a lot of these effects to get some very cool final artwork. So I think this one looks really cool, and I also want to apply a vignette effect like this in here, and maybe a little bit more noise as well. And I think this all looks fine, so I'm just going to select OK. All right, so the next step is, if you see in the natural world, you can't see things. You cannot take perfect pictures like this with a straight line. If you try to make them too perfect, it will look very fake. So what I'm going to do in here is I'm going to go to the filters and apply the pinch filter. And in here, I'm going to apply a little bit of curveness to the center portion, little bit of bloatness to the center portion. -10 is okay, so let's apply and see. It looks little bit more too much, so let's double click and let's change this to fine. A slight bloatness is okay. Something which would have caused by the curveness of the lens is fine. All right, so okay, this look fine. Now maybe let's adjust the reflection of the sun a bit. All we need to do in here is go to the smart object in here and double click, which will open up the previous settings. And in here what I'm going to do is maybe let's bring a little bit more lower to the opacity side, and maybe let's apply a blur, little bit blur, something along this line. Yeah, this look fine because our sun is barely can see, so that's why I made it like this. Once you're okay, just close this and then save it, which will update your original artwork. All right, this is fine. So now what I'm going to show you guys is how to have multiple lighting or color tones in the same artwork. It's really easy. What I'm going to do in here is we already created this smart object in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a copy from this smart object, Control J. And for this smart object, I'm going to apply a camera raw filter with a different set of settings. I think this looks fine, so I'm just going to select OK. This is just for you guys to show you how to create multiple light effects. This is not a perfect light effect, I know. You can work on a different lighting. So for this short tutorial, I want to keep it very simple. That's why I only increase the yellow color. Okay, let's draw the sun. First, go to the gradient and select gradient. And in here, I'm going to select yellow color for both sides. One side, let's bring it a little bit more closer to the red or orange color tone. Don't need to worry too much on this one. Okay, so let's zoom in a bit and let's select the gradient in here. And I'm going to choose this yellow color one side, and this the other side I'm going to make the opacity to 0. And make sure you have been selected the radial gradient and draw something like this in here. And you need to create this on a top on a new layer. I forget to mention that earlier. I had created a new layer on top of the shape. And for this one, you can play with blending modes first. So I'm going to choose this color touch blending mode. And now what I'm going to do is maybe let's change this to something else. Vivid color. Play around, guys, whichever. I think this one look nice because you can't see the sun anymore. It's already set. You barely see the sun, and something like this fine. Maybe let's bring it a little bit more bigger. Okay, and make a copy. Control J, and let's bring it a little bit more bigger like this in here. All right, so this look fine, and we can play with the opacity like this in here, and this one also we can play around. And you guys can play around with these settings until you get a proper sun rays setting, sun rays in here. I think this look better, so I'm just going to leave it as it is, and let's bring it a little more bigger. All right, cool. Now using the lasso tool, draw a shape like this in here, something like a V shape like this, and draw the same for other side also, something like that. Hold the shift key, you can add into the selection. All right, now select the topmost layer and create a mask, which is the opposite side. Let's invert it, Control I, and apply a blur to this effect. All right, looks cool. Alright guys, now select everything and make as a smart object, convert it to smart object. Now we have one layer like this. Okay. Finally, I'm going to select the smart object and go to filters and apply a blur, Gaussian blur, and just apply a blur, something somewhere around 6.2 is fine. Now select the mask of the blur and just using the brush mask out the portion you want to see clearly, and when it go far away, the sky especially, you will see a blurriness there in real life. And when you go to the horizon, until the horizon you can see, after the horizon you will see it's blurred out. So that's the effect I want to get in here. I think this is fine. Okay, so now this look okay, but it's not same as our previous color scheme. So let's say you want to go back to your previous color scheme or previous tone. It's really easy. Just go in here and double click on this layer, which will open up the smart layer, and in here you can see our two copies. So I'm going to hide the first copy, which will go back to our previous color theme, which is blue, which we applied using the camera raw filter. Then we can open up further, double click, which will open up this smart layer. And in here, let's say you want to change the color, I want to change the reflection. I'm going to change this to something like linear light, and we can also play with the curveness, and this look nice. All right, so now once you satisfied, just close this and say yes to save, which will affect the previous smart object. As you can see, now the color scheme is totally changed, and again you can play around here, or you can simply close this as well. Let's play, maybe let's bring down the opacity a bit. Yeah, this look fine, and just close this. Again, it will ask whether you want to save this. Just say yes, which will go back to our original color theme. Alright guys, so this is how you can have multiple colors and multiple effects in the same artboard. That's all about it for today. You guys can go into more details and make this artwork more realistic. Just play around with the filters and camera raw filter especially to make this artwork really realistic. Hopefully you guys learned something new from today's tutorial. Thank you for watching and see you guys in the next tutorial.